My name is Dr. Kevin Pecca. I wanted to make a podcast that exposes people to the true miracles of life and health. All the guests on this show have been specially picked because they bring something positive to the world. They have some of the most amazing and inspiring life stories. These people have a passion for living, healing, and leaving the world better than they found it. There is something inside these people that made them keep fighting through all the tough times, even when people told them it was not possible. They carried on and made their lives beautiful again. And now they are sharing their experiences with the world. This is the Expect Miracles podcast. Enjoy the show. It has been 6 years since I have made my recovery from a brain injury, leaving me with blurred vision, headaches, hand tremors, brain fog, severe anxiety, severe depression, severe fatigue, and an inability to live a functional life. I am so thankful to be here today as an upper cervical chiropractor, helping others heal from brain injuries, neurological conditions, pain, and helping people live their lives to the fullest. I truly love what I do, and I would like to thank all of you beautiful people that support the podcast. I really appreciate it. I had the pleasure of going on the Rise Again podcast with Dr. Peter Raisanen to share my story. It has been a while since I shared my story, and some of the listeners may not know it in its entirety. This episode is my journey back to health. I hope you enjoy it, and don't forget to check out more episodes of the Rise Again podcast if you enjoyed this one. Thank you, Dr. Kevin.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Rise Again podcast, episode 2 with Dr. Kevin Pecca. Now, Kevin came highly recommended to me by 2 of my friends, and after looking more into Kevin's work, I'm absolutely astounded at what he can do and where he's come from to get to where he is today. So he's a doctor of chiropractic. Office is located in Montclair, New Jersey, and he practices a specific method of chiropractic called Blair upper cervical technique. This guy heals people who come to him with diverse diseases and conditions from around the world. I think I saw someone from Ireland, someone coming from Canada. People are flying in from all over to see him. But Kevin is a super unique story in the fact that he overcame some significant odds in his own life that brought him to where he is today, doing what he loves and changing the world the way he is. So thanks a lot for joining me on the podcast today, Kevin.
Absolutely. It's an honor to be part of the show, and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much.
You bet, man. So, your story starts out amazing from the very beginning. I mean, you were a miracle at birth, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I was born around 3 months early. The doctor wanted to put my mom on some medication for whatever reason it was, and I think it might have affected the timing of my birth. Who knows? But yeah, I was born 3 months early. I weighed 2 pounds, 15 ounces. The doctors didn't think I was going to make it through the night because I was so small. I remember my mom telling me that my body was the size of her palm, and off the palm was my head and my legs and my arms just dangling. I was very little, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I worked in a NICU for a couple of years, and so I saw a lot of infants like the size that you were. And it's kind of a precarious time being that small and not fully developed yet, but you did all right.
I did all right. I caught up fast within the first year. I pretty much was around the size I should be. There wasn't really many issues, thankfully, after my birth. I caught up fast and everything. It was great after that.
Excellent. And then, so tell me about your family life and home. I mean, do you have siblings?
I am actually an only child, and part of that reason was my parents actually had a child a year before me that had some kidney failure and kidney issues. So he was only alive for a couple hours. And then my parents had me, which was another huge scare. And I think after they had me, the doctors told my mom, listen, I think this is it. They've been through so much with just 2 children. I think that's the reason why I was an only child, because it was a lot on them, the first 2 childbirths they had.
Oh, yeah, that's incredible. I mean, something like that to go, you wouldn't wish that on anybody. And that's just absolutely terrifying from a parent's perspective to watch people go through that with their children, just kind of life hanging in the balance, so to speak. And what were things that you grew up in? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a town called Howell, New Jersey. It's about 10 minutes from the Jersey Shore. I loved growing up there. I met so many amazing people that I'm still friends with today. It's a great community, a lot of farmland, just regular activities I was into growing up as a kid. I played a lot of sports, played a lot of hockey. I think I played everything: soccer, baseball. I got into lacrosse at a later age, basketball. I was just very into being active, contact sports. I loved it all. And it took up the majority of my childhood and early adult life.
Definitely an athlete, it sounds like. In high school, it sounded like you played a lot of different sports. So it sounds like a big part of your story is this love affair with hockey. When did that really begin for you?
Well, it began when I was about 4. I saw my younger cousin, must have been about 2 or 3 at the time, and he was just cruising around on his rollerblades, and I thought it was the coolest thing. I actually took the rollerblades off his feet and just started cruising around at our family party all day. And ever since then, I was addicted to hockey. I loved every minute of it.
So you played probably in leagues and stuff like that growing up then?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it took up most of my time as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult. I was obsessed with it. I met so many great people that I'm still friends with today, and it opened up a lot of avenues in my life. At one point, it took everything away from me, but it also gave me everything. So I'm very grateful and thankful that I got to play that sport.
That's awesome. What did you play? Why am I asking?
I played mostly center and right wing. So I was a forward.
Attaboy. That's where the action is. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Tell me about, you probably got knocked around a little bit about the ice by the big defenders and stuff like that. I mean, what happened with hockey?
Absolutely. So, I mean, you don't really realize how rough of a sport hockey is until I think you're removed from it, because hitting is just part of the game, and you get your bell rung a couple times, but you kind of just get back up, shake it off. And that could happen a couple times to a game, and throughout a long season, it kind of adds up. I had one really bad concussion, which was the start of most of it. I played junior hockey, and some kid slashed me across the head with his stick. Wasn't thrilled about that, so a fight broke out towards the boards, and right where what connects the glass, the metal piece, I kind of slipped back and hit my head against the metal piece, and it completely cut my head wide open. And I lost consciousness, and then I got punched in the face a couple times after that happened. So I remember being in the fight. I woke up in the locker room with just my jock strap on, and I remember asking people, how did I do? And they were like, how did you do? You need to go to the hospital. You're bleeding from the back of your head. You hit the back of the boards with your head, and you lost consciousness. And I had no idea. So that's a pretty scary thing, being out of it I was probably unconscious, but I was moving around. So I got up, they walked me off the ice, and I woke up in the locker room. So my body was actually awake, but I had no memory of it until about 10 minutes later.
Oh, that is absolutely incredible. I think that's that amnesia that people have just around those incidents, especially those big concussions and things like that. You ended up going to the hospital, I would imagine, right there.
I went to the hospital. Yeah, I got I think it was about 10 staples in the back of my head. Didn't feel too bad. I remember having a little bit of brain fog, a little bit of minor headache for a couple days. But after that, I was fine. And I took 3 weeks off, advisable by the doctors, just to make sure I was good to go back. And I kept playing the entire season. I was fine, was so-called fine. But it's funny, I had a CAT scan. Everything came up negative. They didn't even say I had a concussion, but it really doesn't take much to get a concussion. And if symptoms don't persist, people think you're fine.
Right. And if your experience is like mine, I mean, having had a traumatic brain injury, I mean, with that recovery process, people are like, oh, you look great. Like, man, you're looking awesome. And inside you could feel like, man, I am definitely a wounded warrior here. Like there's something that's not totally right. Did you have that happen in your case?
That is the scariest part of a traumatic brain injury. So I had that one concussion. And like I said, I was fine for that entire season. I was 17 years old then. And then I kept playing in college, and I had a couple good hits to the head in college. But my last concussion, I remember it was like a Tuesday or Wednesday in practice. We were doing a hitting drill, and I collided with one of my friends who was about 6'4", 220. It was like hitting drill in the corners. And I remember his shoulder hit me right in the head because he was taller than me. I remember seeing stars a little bit, but I remember literally shaking my face mask, shook it off, and I was fine. And then that weekend we had a tournament and I just had just a little hits to the head, nothing major, nothing that even stood out. And then I woke up that Monday morning and I had brain fog, blurred vision, dizziness, nausea. My legs were so painful and weak, which is a very strange feeling. And it was almost tough for me to connect the dots to what happened because it felt like I had a concussion, but I don't really. You think when people have a concussion that they're symptomatic right after it happens, when a lot of the times what I see and maybe what you experienced, you could be symptomatic months to even years later down the road from an injury like that. So it was tough for me to connect the dots to what happened. And I remember asking my teammates were like, we don't remember you getting hit over the weekend. What are you talking about? You're fine. And I'm like, I am not fine. It was a very, very scary incident that first day I woke up.
And the symptoms that you described and things like that, I mean, you're probably just wondering what's going on. Like, I mean, what were the steps? Like, what did you end up doing with that? Like, did you just kind of wait?
I went to the physician on campus, and one of the symptoms I had was hand tremors. My hands couldn't stop shaking. That was one of the scariest ones for me. But
interesting.
The doctor said, Kevin, it sounds like you had a concussion. Why don't you wait 2 or 3 weeks? You seem like you'll be okay and you can continue to play. That's exactly what I did. I waited 2 or 3 weeks. I still didn't feel 100%, but the playoffs were coming up. At that age and in that time of my life, that hockey was my world to me. So that's all I wanted to do. So even though I wasn't feeling 100%, I played a game 2 or 3 weeks later. I felt fine during the entire game. And then same kind of scenario, a couple days later, everything, that dizziness, the anxiety, the depression, the hand tremors, the headaches, they hit again about 2 days later. And that's when I started to get very, very worried because, again, I didn't have a big hit or a big one-time thing that I was like, oh, wow, this is a concussion. So I didn't really know what was going on, but I couldn't finish the season after that game because my body just started to shut down on me.
And so you were more reclined to just taking a back seat, hanging out at home, kind of doing other things. I mean, could you focus? Like, how was your memory and things like that?
I couldn't find the right words to say to people. My short-term memory was gone, just almost gone. It was very tough for me to have a conversation with people. It was very tough for me to, studying was not, I couldn't study anymore. And I remember looking at the keyboard to my computer, it was all jumbled. So I couldn't really type papers. I would have to go so slow because if I looked down, everything would kind of be swirling on me. So I couldn't write a paper. I couldn't focus. I couldn't exercise. I remember I tried to do 5 push-ups one time and the whole room started spinning and I had to lay down for about 5 hours and just to feel not like I was going to die. It's funny because 2 weeks prior to that, I was having a great time. I was enjoying school. I was enjoying hockey. And then 2 weeks later, you're filling out disability paperwork at the school because you can't focus, you can't read, you can't exercise, you can't talk to people. Your world is just kind of lost in an instant. And it was very scary.
And you go from this robust athlete who's able to accomplish what they want, who's just vigorously just taking on life, head on, literally head on. And you're in this space now. What's coming up for you? I mean, are you feeling resigned? Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling just let down, depressed? What's kind of going through your head at this time?
That was kind of my identity as a person. I played hockey. That's what I love to do. And when that's gone, you feel very lost and confused. And I had unexplainable depression and anxiety. I was always a very happy, upbeat, positive thinking person, but I had no control over my thoughts. I had absolutely no control over my thoughts. I had no idea when the severe depression was going to hit, when the panic attacks were going to hit. I would just start randomly crying to myself. I had no control over my emotions. And on the flip side to that, I couldn't really feel any emotions. I was emotionless. I was unresponsive to people talking to me. I couldn't feel, for instance, I remember my grandmother passed away. She had a great life. She was about 96. She was getting up there and she passed away. And I remember everybody being so upset, obviously, understandable at her funeral. And I was very close to my grandmother, but I was so out of it. I was literally just looking through everybody and my uncles and everybody. They were like, what's wrong with Kevin? Like, he doesn't look good. People were like, oh, he had a concussion. He should be all right. But what we kind of touched on before, that's the scariest part of these injuries. You look at somebody and they look fine on the outside. It's not a physical injury that you can see, like a broken arm or anything like that. It's the best way I could describe that 4 years of my life was a mental prison. I had no control over my emotions. I had no idea when the anxiety and depression were going to hit. I was not myself at all. I was having out-of-body experiences where I was almost looking at myself in my body, and I would have to think, what would the old Kevin say in this conversation? Or I would have to like pretend laugh when somebody made a joke. Either I couldn't follow it or I was just emotionless. And that was just not my persona at all.
Wow. To go from like a super extroverted, fun, probably a pretty gregarious, outgoing person to go to kind of just playing along, trying to just be socially acceptable and just try to fit in. I mean, depression and anxiety definitely can relate there, but I mean, just I can almost feel the pain that you were going through at that time. Now tell me, like, were you being treated? Were medical professionals trying to treat you? I mean, what was going on?
Definitely. So after about a month with no improvement of after the doctors telling me to rest, take it easy, you'll be fine, I actually began to feel worse. So I remember I was in Washington, D.C., and I remember calling my mom, who was in New Jersey, and saying, Mom, there is something very wrong. I don't know what it is, but I'm not getting any better. I think we might have to see a specialist, a neurologist, somebody that really specializes in brain injuries. And like I said before, I didn't have a big, severe concussion so I felt weird calling it a brain injury because there wasn't a moment where you really, maybe the one time in junior hockey where I got that really bad concussion, but that was years later. This is years later now. So I didn't have that one moment where I was like, I 100% had a brain injury. So I felt almost bad or like a wuss saying I had a brain injury. And people that I was surrounded with couldn't really tell what was going on with me. So I just went to go see a neurologist and they kind of told me the same thing. They said, Kevin, you just got to give it a little bit more time. It's still very early. It could take 3, 4, 5, 6 months for these injuries to heal. And they said, you'll probably never play hockey again. And I said, wow, all right. Well, that was crushing. I remember just kind of crying in the waiting room after that. Not like I was going to go professional hockey or anything, but it was my world. And after hearing that, it was just devastating to me. It was crushing. I could almost live with that, but I couldn't live with these symptoms because 24/7, I never felt normal for years. Like it was years where I didn't feel normal as I just didn't know what was going on. I saw a neurologist. He told me, Kevin, this is all normal. It's part of the brain injury. You'll heal up. And then I said, okay. And then I went back to the same neurologist 3 months later. And he almost like didn't believe me. He's like, Kevin, it's all in your head. Like you're going to be fine. And I said, he had a flashlight on his desk. And I remember picking up the flashlight because remember I told you I had hand tremors. Mm-hmm. I picked up the flashlight and I put up against his wall and my hand was shaking with the flashlight and the light was shaking against the wall. And I told him, I was like, I'm 20 years old and I have hand tremors. This is not normal. Something's wrong. And he didn't really have an answer for me. So I pushed on because I didn't really want to believe it. So I saw another neurologist and she wanted to help me. She put me on seizure medication because I told her I was having hand tremors, and she put me on painkillers because I told her I was just in excruciating pain all the time. And they put me on antidepressants because they wanted to boost my mood. And I took all 3 of these for months and it was making me feel worse. Some of the side effects for antidepressants are more suicidal. So I remember just going to my local chiropractor and I was telling her, oh yeah, the neurologist put me on seizure medication and painkillers and antidepressants. And I said, I don't think the antidepressants are working. I'm feeling more suicidal. And she's like, maybe they are. That really struck a chord with me because you look at the side effects and it could cause more depression and more suicidal thoughts. So once I looked up on that, I stopped all medication cold turkey, which I don't recommend, but I always knew that they were only masking the problems. It wasn't going after the root cause of the problem. And I didn't want to be on medication for the rest of my life. I stopped taking the medication. I drifted into a very, very dark place after that because all these brilliant people were telling me that I was never going to get better or that it was all in my head and I was making it up. And I remember they call it the National Concussion Center in Washington, D.C. I was seeing a neuropsychologist, and 5 minutes, I'm telling him the same story I'm telling you. And he stops me right in the middle of my story and he says, Kevin, what if I told you you're going to have to live with this for the rest of your life? And I just kind of looked back at him, my jaw dropped, and I said, 5 minutes in, you're giving up on me already. I think I want to see another doctor. And I never went back to that office after that. Even in my practice today, I like to give everybody hope, no matter what they're going through, that there is a chance of recovery. And I was getting a lot of no's and closed doors on me. It was after that, I probably fell into the deepest depression I've ever been in my life. And after 2 years of waking up every day with anxiety, depression, brain fog, knee pain, with a positive mindset saying, you know what, tomorrow's going to be different. Tomorrow's going to be different every day for 2 years. And nothing changed for 2 years. And I remember waking up one day and I just kind of rolled over to my side and I just started bawling my eyes out crying because one, I couldn't take the pain anymore. And two, it felt like I lost everything. I couldn't do anything anymore. And I just started crying and feeling sorry for myself. And then it's funny, after that, I was going to kill myself that day. That's how much pain I was in. And I kind of slowly collected myself and regathered my thoughts. And then I started laughing hysterically because it was almost comedy at this point, that it was just not getting any better. And it became almost funny. Like I was in that dark of a place. And it kind of lightened the mood a little bit. And I made a promise to myself that day that I was going to do whatever it took to get better, because I don't think I could have ever taken my own life, but I was gearing up for a long, miserable life. And this is 2 years have gone on at this point. So my friends didn't know what to say to me. People stopped calling you to hang out. It was a very lonely time. Cried myself to sleep most nights, but if you hang in there long enough, you will definitely find a miracle. That's kind of what happened to me.
That's what you stand for. That's amazing. I could feel some of your pain when you're talking about those medicines that they put you on. And I don't even want to talk about my experience here. My experience was different than yours, but I do want to touch base on the treatment that they kind of gave you and that feeling of absolute like hopelessness that you had. I mean, being suicidal, hopeless, and just not getting any answers. I mean, there could be nothing that could be more frustrating. Were you ever recommended speech therapy for memory or for any of that stuff? I mean, did you feel like you recovered all of the memory that you feel like you lost, or did you?
I am completely healed. From the time I got that last concussion to now, I feel better than I have ever felt in my entire life. Now, that being said, from that moment I just told you about, it took me another 2-3 years to be healed. I started doing some research, and I remember that day that I told you I wanted to kill myself, I went to a Catholic university with a huge basilica on campus, and I thought to myself, hey, maybe I can talk to a priest. Maybe he can sprinkle some holy water on me and give me something, give me a couple Hail Marys and Our Fathers, or at least point me in the right direction.
Some hope, right?
Some hope. And I've said this story on my podcast before, but I owe this man, this priest, my life, because I walked into his office that one day, and he was a very unconventional priest. He had cigarettes on his desk. He had a full grizzly beard, and kind of just sat me down and told me to tell me my story. the way he presented himself, he pulled up a chair and he really listened. That was one of the most frustrating things that I went through. Was I felt like nobody was listening to me. I felt like everyone was just listening to my symptoms and just trying to mask it with a pill, or they didn't know what to think. So they said, you know, you're never going to get better. This guy, I really needed somebody to hear me out, just to hear what I was saying. And this priest pulled up a chair, listened to me, and about halfway through, he stopped me. And I thought he was going to tell me the same thing the doctors were telling me. Kevin, this sounds like pretty serious. I don't know if you're ever going to recover. He told me, he stopped me where I was, and he said, Kevin, you can do all the hoping, wishing, praying in the world, but if you don't go out and find the root cause of this problem, you are never going to get better. And he kind of told me to take a step back, and he's like, Kevin, think about all the people in the world that have ever lived. Don't you think there has been one person of all the humans that have ever lived? Do you think there has been one person that has gone through the same thing you're going through? And I bet you that one person has found it and beat it. So he said, you know what? Keep doing your research. Find that person. There's got to be someone out there that can help you. And if there's not, you have to be that one person to get out there, get off your ass, and find that solution, because it's never going to get better if you just keep sitting back and feeling sorry for yourself. And I was not expecting that at all. I mean, a bell went off in my head, and I said, this guy's right. He didn't give me it had nothing to do with religion. He didn't give me any BS. He told me how it was, and it was the best advice I've ever gotten in my life. And directly after that meeting, I started making some phone calls, and I got in contact with an ex-NHL player who used to coach me, who had his career ended through concussions, and he was doing really well now. And so I called him, and he said, I've been going to see this one doctor. Have you ever heard of platelet-rich plasma injections?
Yes.
So he was doing the regenerative medicine around the brainstem area. So I go to see this doctor, and he is the first doctor that said, Kevin, we could definitely help you. I see this cases all the time. We've gotten people better that have been worse than you. So I said, perfect, I'm in. I mean, the moment he told me he can get me better, I looked over in the chair next to me, and my mom started crying, because not only was I experiencing all this, but a brain injury puts the entire family through the ringer. It's not just you. It's everybody that's surrounded by you is affected by these things. So she just started crying tears of joy. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, I really need to get better here, because not only is my health suffering, I'm affecting all the loved ones around me. So that was a really big wake-up call for me to do everything in my power to get better. I did a couple injections. I felt great after the first one. I remember the brain fog lifting, and everything was very clear. And I said, oh, wow, this is what normal feels like. This is how people live. I remember my mood increased, the brain fog lifted, but it only lasted a couple days, and then everything came back. And normally you're supposed to wait about 2 to 3 weeks in between those shots. I called the doctor immediately after it wore off, and I said, I need another one because everything's back. And he's like, all right, come in next week. So I kept going to this doctor, and for whatever reason, the shots didn't have the same effect as it did my first injection. And I did about 10 or 11 of those shots, and they are fairly pricey. And after the 10th or 11th one, we couldn't afford it anymore. So I had to stop. So the shots ultimately didn't end up working, but it also pointed me the right direction, because this was the first doctor that told me posture dictates function. So if you clear the area out around the brainstem, which is your control center, your body will heal itself and start functioning again to its optimal potential. That stuck with me. Even though I wasn't healed, I applaud this doctor. He pointed me in the right direction. And funny enough, throughout my journey of trying to get back to health, I can't tell you how many practitioners told me, whatever you do, do not go see the chiropractor. So I grew up with chiropractic care my entire life, but I listened to these people because I didn't want to ruin anything. And on some levels, I do agree with them. There are some chiropractors that will just take your neck, twist it side to side, and could cause further damage. But there's also with any field, there are some very gifted chiropractors that are healers and that do phenomenal work and can cure neurological disorders. So I was left with no answers yet again. So I decided, you know what, maybe I'll just go back to my family chiropractor because I'm still feeling the worst I've ever felt. It's about 2.5 years have gone by at this point, maybe 3. So I just went to go see my family chiropractor, and he did specific chiropractic work, and he got me functioning again to about 60, 70, 75% better. I was seeing him about 3 or 4 times a week. The only problem was if I didn't see him for a week, all my symptoms would come back. So I was extremely reliant on this doctor. And so I'm thinking to myself, what if this guy goes on vacation? Or what if I ever wanted to backpack around Europe? This isn't really solving my problems. I'm reliant on this person. So I figured that there was something to the chiropractic. I didn't know what it was, but it was getting me somewhat better. So I decided to go study it and dive a little deeper and see if there was a technique that could possibly heal me down the road. And sure enough, well, my cousin went to chiropractic school out in California. I've always been attracted to that state. I've always wanted to live there. And I followed in her footsteps and moved to California. And sure enough, 3 or 4 weeks into my school year, everything started coming back. Blurred vision, dizziness, anxiety, depression, headaches. And as you know, continuing master level education, it's very taxing. You have to use your brain a lot. It's almost like a full-time job, just studying, learning the anatomy, all that. And I couldn't really do that with the brain fog and the headaches. So I usually don't tell people this story, but
that's what the space is for, man.
Yeah. So there was a person in my class that said, we were first term, so nobody knows how to adjust. And they said, oh, one of my parents was a chiropractor. I grew up giving adjustments. I can give you an adjustment. And I was giving probably about $100 a week to one of the chiropractors down the road, and which doesn't sound like a ton of money, but I had student loans and I needed to save every penny I could. So I said, you know what, if this girl can adjust me, I'll be saving some money and I'll be good. So I got a neck adjustment from her, and something just cracked in my neck. She did one of those standard twist pop adjustments, and something
HVLA adjustments.
Yeah. Something cracked in my neck. I said, what was that? And she goes, I don't know. What was that? And I said, I don't know. You are the one that just gave me the adjustment. What was that? The whole right side of my neck swelled up. Brain fog was so intense. The headaches were intense. That was a Thursday, and I was getting tutored by my friend the next day, and I'm gearing up to just drop out of school and go back to New Jersey because I couldn't function anymore. And my one friend that was tutoring me, he was about a year into the program. He was further ahead in the program than I was. And he's like, what's wrong with you today? And I said, I don't know. I think I'm going to have to drop out. Brain fog, headaches are all back. I can't concentrate. And he said, I think I might know one person that can help you. Now, at this point, I've heard this before, but this was legit my last chance, or else I was going back to New Jersey. So I made an appointment with this doctor, and I was in his office, I think on a Monday or Tuesday. And I walk into his office. I'm filling out the paperwork, and I turn the corner. On his wall, it says, expect miracles. And I've never gravitated more to a sign than that. It was almost, my eyes locked in on that. It was engraved in my brain. And I had a thought to myself, I'll say, oh, you know what? This place looks a little different. There might be some hope here, but I'm still not feeling great. So I'm doing my intake paperwork. I sit down with Dr. Drew Hall, who's an Blair upper cervical specialist in California. And I'm telling him the same exact story I'm telling you right now. And I see him smirking across the desk, like almost laughing. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell was so funny? This is not a funny story. I'm in so much pain right now. And so he lets me finish my story. And he said, Kevin, I had the same exact story as you. I was wrestling my friend after baseball practice. He picked me up, dropped me on my head, and I felt a huge crack in my neck, and he thought he was completely paralyzed. And after a couple seconds, he wiggled his hands and fingers, and he thought he was fine. And then 8 months down the road, headaches, blurred vision, dizziness, anxiety, depression, his sinuses swelled shut, and he also didn't know what to do, and he didn't want to live anymore. And he went to go see an upper cervical specialist, and it completely saved his life. That's how he got into the work. And so he told me, he said, Kevin, I had the same exact story as you. There's no doubt in my mind that we can get you better and fix you up and get you living your life again. And this was new to me. No, besides that one doctor that told me he can get me better, there was conviction in his voice that I believed. But at the same time, I was like, I heard this before. Let me see it. Show me, because I can't live like this anymore. So they took the 3-dimensional x-rays. They figured out which adjustment I needed that was almost like a blueprint to my own anatomy. And they laid me on the table. They gave me a very, very precise upper neck adjustment. And I remember popping up off the table, and I felt the anxiety and depression leave my body almost immediately. I wasn't without that anxiety and depression for 4 years, and I felt it lift almost immediately. And I said, oh man, something just changed. What's going on here? And so they had me rest in the back room, and I felt a surge of life coming back into my body that was not there for so long. It was almost, I felt connected to source again, whatever you want to call that, higher power, God, I don't care what you call it. That's what I felt. And I remember going home that night, and the colors on the trees were brighter and greener. The brain fog was gone. I finally slept through the night for the first time in 4 years. And I remember waking up the next morning without any doubt. Every fiber in my being was like, I have to do this. And I'm not saying I was healed after that one day, because that's not true. I had an amazing first adjustment, but it took me about 6, 7, 8 months to make, I don't even want to say a full recovery, but it took me to feel normal again. I continued to heal a year after that. I didn't feel completely like myself until a year and a half after that, but every couple weeks, something was getting better. Brain fog was getting better. The headaches were almost gone. The hand tremors, that was one thing that went away almost immediately as well. So every couple weeks, I was getting my life back, and I remember looking in the mirror about 8 months later and being like, oh my God, the headaches aren't here. The anxiety, depression is gone. There's no more hand tremors. I was living again. I was thriving. And what did this guy do? He touched a bone in my upper neck, and I was getting my life back. It's so far out of our paradigm of health, people almost don't believe it. And what he did was what I was kind of talking about before. If you clear the interference around the brainstem, you get the proper nerve flow back, blood flow back, and your body begins to heal itself. And that's exactly what started to happen. I got my life back, and geez, it didn't happen overnight. I had so many doors slammed shut on me. It would have been very easy to just kind of sit back and accept that I was never going to get better. It took me 4 years with over a dozen practitioners, and I just stayed the course and believed that I was going to get better. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I don't believe in coincidences anymore. I mean, to land in somebody's office on the completely other side of the country that has the same exact story as you, it almost gives me goosebumps. And that he became my mentor and taught me all the Blair upper cervical work, along with some other great chiropractors, Dr. Hafer and Dr. Banich. But it has been nothing short of life-changing. It saved my life. It's what I do every day. It's my passion. And it's really amazing to see people with brain injuries, concussions, headaches, severe neck pain come into my office and get their life back. It's why I do it. And it's so gratifying. And to think I almost gave up in 2012 and almost killed myself that day. It's so gratifying to just be alive. And I mean, it sounds corny to say, but I am so thankful. I wake up and I don't have any, like every day is a beautiful day. Sometimes I get moved to tears because for 4 years, every day was the worst day of my life. So not waking up with a headache and blurred vision and brain fog and not able to concentrate, it's a beautiful day. And it's almost made my life more appreciative because I can appreciate the little things that I wouldn't have been able to do if I hadn't gone through what I thought was a devastating time in my life. Turned out to be the most beautiful thing that ever happened to me.
Yes, absolutely. And it's all relevant, right? And so when I look at your life and I kind of see how you scraped rock bottom, and one might even surmise and go far enough as to say like that was a blessing in disguise. But isn't that how life is for so many of us? And if we don't give up hope, and if we can kind of keep pushing through and keep that, what your word is, your hope, like that's your big word. And that's the thing that you hand off to people. Things serendipitously start to appear, like the man who was the catalyst for all the change, this priest, the cigarettes on his desk, who was able to be direct and to give you words of direction instead of saying you've had this injury or you used to be like this, but now you're going to be like this. He said, so now you've got this stuff and now let's go figure out how to fix it. Instead of the but, he kind of just threw in the and, right? So
I don't think there is any disease, illness, ailment that the body cannot heal itself from, whether it's coming to my office, whether it's going to any other practitioner that has a positive mindset, that's a true healer. Anything is possible to heal from. I am living proof of that. And not only my story, but you do occasionally hear of stage 4 cancers clearing up, just very severe situations. Just people do have these miracles, and we are so, it's easy with the news and the television and everything. And even if you Google one of your ailments, the worst case scenario pops up. And it's very scary because I did that with my concussions and awful things were popping up, and it got me even more depressed and more scared that I was going to have to live with this forever. Even if you are struggling, mindset is so important. It might not get you better, but it will open the doors. And if you pay attention to the signs, it will lead you in the right direction. It's never over.
Oh, beautifully said. I think one of the biggest things I love to do with people in my office is to really work on the mindset of where they're at. And you get that right, exactly like you're saying. You know what? Other stuff can be off, but if that's off, ain't nothing else going to be worked out, right? You're going to be struggling with, right? So
absolutely.
So your practice is Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic.
Correct.
And where's that is that in Montclair, New Jersey?
So I was fortunate enough I bought a practice from Dr. Meg Banich, who was a third generation upper cervical chiropractor. Her grandfather started the practice in Montclair in around 1948, I think. Her grandfather was there, her father was there, and then she took it over from her father. And it's been in Montclair for about 50 years. And then she retired, and she was in one of these old Victorian houses in Montclair, New Jersey, which it's a very prestigious town. And, the property taxes and everything were crazy. So I moved it down the road like 2 miles. The practice is now in West Orange, New Jersey.
Okay, got it. Yeah, and I was wondering if you would have I would have expect the practice to be called Expect Miracles Chiropractic. If it were,
I mean, I didn't change the name of the business because it was such an established practice that people were Googling it. And if I changed the name, people would have been really confused. So I kept the name of the practice and just made the name of my podcast Expect Miracles, where I have other doctors, healers, people with amazing life stories on as a testament to give people hope, show people that you can overcome anything. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it in other people, and it's a beautiful thing.
And how do people find out more about you, Kevin?
So I am on pretty much all the major social media networks. Dr. Kevin Pecca on YouTube, Kevin Pecca on Facebook, Kevin Pecca on Instagram, and Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic on Facebook as well. And I also have a positive affirmations and quotes page on Instagram called Easel Affirmations, which just gives people daily quotes and sayings, just a little pick me up to inspire people and get them through the day.
Awesome. No, that's great. So, and then what kind of conditions? So maybe do a little run through of some of the conditions that you like to see. So you guys, if you're listening to Kevin, Dr. Pecca, if you are listening to him and you're somewhere around the country and you're thinking about, man, I'm really struggling right now, or you're a hockey player who has a story rings true to you. If anybody's suffered anything, you're a wrestler, you're an athlete, and you've been injured, or you've been in a really bad car accident, you've really just struggled. I had a patient actually fell off a ladder some years ago, and he actually, things like that. So if there's any, you've just not been better in Kevin's story, reach out to him, send him a message, write him an email, and I'm going to put all of his contact information in the show notes so you guys can easily get a hold of him. And if you guys don't know how to get a hold of him, get a hold of me and I'll get a hold of him for you and I'll put you guys in contact. So please do that. I mean, he's an amazing guy. He's doing amazing work out there with people. You don't have to go further than his website and Instagram to just see all of the amazing testimonials and work he's doing. So one last thing I was going to bring up is, so what's going on? You've probably been following it. What's been going on in the NHL with concussions?
So every year there's at least one big star that gets a pretty nasty concussion and kind of has the same situation as me: brain fog, blurred vision, dizziness, headaches, and energy levels are low, and it completely ends their career. And it's sad to see. I'm not saying upper cervical chiropractic is the end all be all to every single ailment or condition, but the lower part of your brain, the brainstem, which is the control center of our body, sits in the upper neck. Now there's two bones in the upper neck. There's C1, which is the atlas, and C2, the axis, and they house the brainstem. And there's no disc space in between C1 and C2 to stabilize that area like there is in the rest of the spine. So it's a very vulnerable area with the most neurological significance. It's literally the gateway to our health. So if you're involved in contact sports, car accidents, falling off the monkey bars when you were little, it doesn't really take much because it's an unstable area in our body. Those bones lock out. They cut off nerve flow and blood flow to the rest of the body, and it causes all of these symptoms such as headaches, blurred vision, dizziness, neck pain, back pain. It can cause almost anything. So if you keep that area clear with a precise upper neck adjustment using three-dimensional x-rays so you can actually visualize which bone is out and where to hit it. The reason why we get such great results is because we are extremely specific and we tailor each adjustment to that person's body. So there's no guesswork. We are putting that bone exactly where it needs to be so you get that 100% nerve flow and blood flow. And once that is in place, we say holding is healing. So our goal is to give you one neck adjustment and have it hold weeks to months to years, keep that area clear, get the nerve flow and blood flow back, and you watch a lot of people get their lives back. And that goes, I mean, my goal is to get upper cervical chiropractic in the NHL. Do you know the quarterback for the Chicago Bears, McMahon?
Yes, I've heard of him. Yep.
Yes, I'm not sure his first name, but he had a very severe case of post-concussion syndrome, and he went to there's about 7 different upper cervical techniques. He went to an upper cervical chiropractor. It gave him his life back. It was actually on 60 Minutes, and I think there might have been an ESPN 30 for 30 on it. So we are gaining attention in the media. That's why I do my podcasts. That's why I go on other great shows like yours, just to spread the good word and show people that there is hope. And in upper cervical chiropractic is very good for neurological conditions. We see a lot of Meniere's patients, which is a very disturbing inner ear disorder, which causes ear ringing, vertigo. People, it's devastating. I have so many people that come into my office and saying they have Meniere's and they think their life is over because of what other doctors told them. And when we get them adjusted, their hearing comes back, the ringing stops, the dizziness and vertigo stop. So we see Meniere's patients, post-concussion, headache, multiple sclerosis, stop having their seizures when their upper neck is put back into alignment. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Wow. And when you said one thing earlier, it's something that be specific to be terrific, right? So, I mean, I
love that. I've never heard that. I love that.
Yeah. Well, you can take that one. That's not mine. That's exactly what you're doing. I mean, that's a quote you need to have on your wall, but there's something about non-specific chiropractic, which is that the high velocity, low amplitude. That's that, when they do the twisting and the cracking and popping and stuff like that. And there can be some benefit to that in a normally healthy person or whatever else. But like you had mentioned, being specific about what you actually need to do. Like that's where the rubber hits the road. That's the money right there. So it's been absolutely amazing to have you on. And like I said, people, for those of you listening, if Kevin's story has really inspired you to take some massive action in your life, like look no further, just take action on whatever it is. Maybe you got some glimmer of hope, like, hey, I got to do this thing. This thing's been waiting on me a long time and it isn't going to be there if I just keep waiting for it or whatever. Take massive action in your life, move forward. And remember, action is power, not whether you succeed or you fail, but action is power. So move forward, make it an awesome day. And I want to thank you, Kevin, for joining me on the podcast today.
Dr. Peter, thank you so much. It was an honor to be on your show. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to share my story. And it sounds like you really have an amazing show. And I wish you the best of luck. And it was an honor to be part of it. Thank you so much.
You're an amazing man. Keep doing all the amazing work, and we'll get some people over to you to get them healed.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, subscribe, give us 5 stars, and leave a review. It really helps boost the podcast and spread the good word. My chiropractic practice is located in West Orange, New Jersey at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. You can also find us on Facebook at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. All of my information is on my website at drkevinpecca.com, drkevinpecca.com. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Dr. Kevin Pecca for podcast episodes, patient testimonials, and educational videos. I have daily affirmations and inspirational quotes on Instagram at Easel Affirmations, EASEL Affirmations. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at drkevinpecca@gmail.com, drkevinpecca@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Cheers.